Everyone says, oh, I want to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
25-year-old Patricia believes $1 million will be enough for retirement.
In terms of retirement planning, I just have like a rough ballpark figure of like 1 million by like maybe age 65.
Oh, okay.
But that confidence rests on one risky assumption, that life and spending stay simple.
You know, 1 million does sound like a big figure, right? It is a big figure in today's context. But you know, if we actually fast forward it, so 1 million in 30 years itself, it's only 400,000 today.
That's before healthcare, before rising costs, and before a retirement that could last 3 decades or more.
The last thing I would want is to be worrying about money when I'm 85 years old.
So if not 1 million, what does a realistic number look like?
For young clients, we do suggest looking at around 5 to 6 mil.
That's a shocker for me, but in a good way.
6 million sounds extreme until you bring it back to today.
5 to 6 million in, say, 30, 35 years down the road, if you bring it to today's present value, it's only around 1 to 2 million.
For a Gen Z like Patricia to reach that goal, Jason says the biggest risk isn't earning too little, it's starting too late.
You have time horizon on your side, so that power of compounding effect, it will actually play in your factors as well.
That's why your 20s aren't about income or comfort. They're about growth.
So at this current life stage, we are looking at accumulation of wealth, where you're focusing on trying to grow your portfolios. Right? So we're not looking so much at dividend returns.
The classic 50-30 rule recommends putting 50% of your money toward needs, 30% toward wants, and 20% towards savings or investments. But for a young investor like Patricia, Jason says this can be flipped. Put investing first while time is still on her side.
Why I do this is because the power of compounding. The more that you put in earlier into the portfolio, the more time it has to actually grow and accumulate. Right? And I think at this life stage where there's not a lot of financial liabilities or responsibilities yet, you can still afford that kind of a push. Right? Of course, when you go older, it might be a bit difficult to actually keep to this. Then we readjust accordingly. In terms of asset allocation wise, usually I would suggest, for clients of this life stage to actually go for a slightly more aggressive allocation. So it could be like, say, even 70-30, look at more equity-focused portfolios, right, where the growth rate is there. I think what you could also look at is a core satellite approach, right, where a core allocation of the portfolios could be something into a bit more diversified, a bit more stable, consistent, right? And then the satellite allocation is something where you have a bit more niche, a bit more thematic. Right? So this could be like, say, disruptive technology portfolios. It could be, say, precious metals portfolios even, right? And that's where you have a framework in a sense.
Patricia isn't ready to set aside half her income for investing, but she's taking the first steps. She has 6 months of emergency savings, an initial $10,000 investment, and plans to contribute about $1,300 a month. On its own, that may not sound like much. But over decades, consistent investing and increasing contributions as income grows is how early starters build towards long-term goals like 6 million.
If you are actually able to remain invested in the market in a very consistent manner, putting in the monthly contributions very diligently, then you will be able to see the impacts of it in the long term as well.
To make sure short-term needs don't derail long-term goals, Jason suggests a simple structure to separate your money. So Patricia won't need to dip into her retirement portfolio, allowing it to compound over decades.
In the first bucket, you have your emergency liquidity bucket, right? That one, you don't touch it unless you really need to do it. The second bucket is what I call the short-term goals or the passive income bucket. That's typically goals that, like say, for example, your holiday travel. It could even include like shorter-term goals like saving up for a house. And the third bucket itself is more of a growth engine, right? Where you typically set up a long-term investments. So for the third bucket, usually I would suggest for clients not to touch it, because that's essentially something that you want to do to invest in a very consistent basis, right, on a month by month. And your housing, your short-term traveling, all this can be actually looked at in the second bucket.
The recalculation doesn't discourage Patricia. It changes how she thinks. And for the first time, retirement feels real and, more importantly, achievable.
I realized that I really need to sit down and think about investing. So the reality check they gave me, which is like 6 million goal, I think is a shocker, but I think it's really good. And I think moving forward, I really have to put that money aside so that I can reach that goal in future. And what I'll start doing immediately is looking into platforms, like the investment kind of platform. And then after I figure out like, okay, which one I'm comfortable with, then I'll actually put it into action and invest my money properly.
Yep.
Yeah.